My name is Petersen. Start in gaming, which is the reason I'm here, about 15 years ago, when I began working for a company called Chaosium Incorporated. I designed a game called Call of Cthulhu, worked on a game called RuneQuest, a game called ElfQuest, and about 30 other products at the Chaosium company until 1988, when I left Chaosium and went to a company called Microprose, which is a computer game company. I then switched over from being a paper game designer into being a computer game designer, which is what I am now. At Microprose, I designed a number of games, none of which became very famous. Lightspeed, Hyperspeed, Dr. Floyd's Wacky Windows, Darklands, and after almost 6 years there, I left and came to a company called id Software, where I designed Doom and Doom 2, and I'm currently in the process of designing a game called Quake. Because this speech has no specified subject, I figure we can talk about anything we like, including Doom or Quake, computers, non-computers, anything. So before we go on, does anyone have any questions about any of my background, what games I haven't done, or any other questions? No? Okay. Yes?
Why do you research computer games?
To make more money. I have a family I have 5 children, and need to feed them all, it turns out. Roleplay, and now don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with role-playing games, okay? I play role-playing games still to this day. I like them a lot. But see, the way I picture a role-playing game is really all about getting together with your friends. Okay, it's not really about playing a game. It's getting together around the table, eating potato chips, drinking Coke, telling old stories about things you did before, and and playing a game too. That's part of it. But that's not the main part of it for me. Okay, it's really about being together with your friends. Well, you can't always get a band of friends together to play a game. Okay, and that's where the computer comes in. The computer is like an instant little plastic and glass friend. It's always there to play with you. It's not as fun as a real role-playing game, but it's always there. So there's a place for role-playing games, for computer games, I think, as well as paper games. And of course, with Doom and Doom 2, we've broken the boundary and made computer games a little bit more fun by letting you be able to play with other people on the computer. It still doesn't have the full interaction that you get in a tabletop game, because the only way you really can interact with people in Doom is to insult them or to kill them. But it's a step up, it's a step in the right direction. Anyway. So, no questions? Okay. On with more. In America, well, first, actually, I have a question for you guys. Should I now begin talking about paper games or role-playing games, or go into how to become a game designer, or how a game is designed, or why computer games are so bad? Anyone have any preference? If you don't, I can just keep on talking about whatever I want, but if somebody actually has a subject they're interested in hearing about, no? Wow. Okay, Finns are very reserved, I guess. Well, I'll begin talking about tabletop role-playing games. And are most of you here role-playing game designers? Or not designers, players? Yes? Wave a hand. Role-playing games? Okay. I'll talk about that for now. In America, we've divided role-playing game campaigns into 4 categories. When I say we, it's not universal, but there's 4 different kinds of campaigns. First, there is the power gaming campaign. In a power gaming campaign, the characters are really concerned about getting really high level as fast as they can and killing all the monsters. They say things like, at 3 experience points per orc, fireballing orc villages really adds up. Okay? They have 40th level assassin, paladin, thief, lords, a lot of power gamers are very young, but not all of them. Usually a young power gamer in America is called a munchkin. And they're very much into the whole advancement sort of thing. Another type are war gamers. These players treat their character as a little cardboard chip. And they say, well, let's see, I guess someone should stay behind to hold up the dragon so you guys can get around and get her from the back. My guy will do that. You know, and they don't care if he's killed or not. He's just a little personality-less object to use. These people, a lot of them really like superhero games. Now, when I say not all superhero games like this, but a lot of people like this because in superhero games you can have a lot of interaction between different abilities. You have characters that design their character in such a way that they'll intermesh with someone else's character so that he can, for instance, throw them into battle or use his power to mirror off him or some weird thing like that. The third style is what we call storytelling. In the storytelling campaign, the game master has a plot to tell and explain, and the players are kind of pretty much expected to go along with it with whatever variations are necessary. But in the worst case, what you end up with is if the princess is going to be rescued, she's going to be rescued whether or not the players, succeed. And if she's not going to be rescued, the players aren't going to be able to rescue her no matter what. In his best case, you have cool stories that everyone kind of participates in the telling of. And in the final category, we have what are called, I call them role players, but genuine role players. And these are people that do things like roll up a guy with a peg leg because it would be fun. Okay, instead of, all right, or that will spend the whole adventure without ever getting out of the bar and go and get on with the plot. They're having plenty of fun at the bar. The game master just kind of sits there and watches them interact with the barmaid and the bartender and try to break into the stuff in the back. But all these styles have their productive and their less productive aspects, and most campaigns are a combination of one or more types. My own campaigns that I play are probably mostly role-playing with a strong element of storytelling, but the role-playing is more important than the storytelling. And then just a teeny bit of power gaming and wargaming. In fact, hardly any of those two, but there's a little bit. So we occasionally have little fights, or the players will want to get better at what they do. But I actually remember a guy in a game that rolled up a character that had a peg leg, and it was very difficult to deal with. Or an example of the Cthulhu game I played, the guy came into the game and he said, I'm going to be a professional baseball player. I said, how am I going to get you in my adventures? Why would a professional baseball player ever want to go and hunt occult monsters? I don't understand this. He said, well, I got a baseball bat I can fight the monsters with, and I talk on the baseball slang. I said, get out of here. Stop it. I don't want you to be, think of something else. Or at least give him a reason for this guy to be in the baseball player. So he repented and shaped out. But even though I like the role-playing style best, sometimes it was not aggravating exactly. It's just kind of amusing that the kind of things people can do. I assume that in most Finnish games you can categorize people as one of the four styles as well. Power gaming, role-playing, storytelling, or the fourth one, which I will soon remember. Power gaming, role-playing, storytelling, wargaming, that's it. That's the one I use the least, so I couldn't remember it. Okay. Anyway, those four styles. Next time you're playing with someone and he does something you don't like, you can just tell him, I think you're being too power gaming for me, or whatever you want. Next, I think I will now discuss differences between computer games and role-playing games until someone stops me or raises his hand. Yes?
Are you running a campaign for the moment?
I am running yes, I am running a campaign at the moment.
RuneQuest?
Pardon?
RuneQuest?
I just barely finished, I didn't finish my RuneQuest campaign. I have a brief pause in it during which I am playing Cthulhu. Actually, at this very moment, I'm not playing a game at all, but because we're really busy doing the next game, Quake, at work, and so no one's able to play the role-playing game for a few weeks. But then we're going to go back and do Call of Cthulhu. And then after that, RuneQuest again for a while. What we do is we'll play one game for a while and then not get sick of it exactly, but, well, yeah, we kind of get sick of it. And then we'll stop it. When the game doesn't end, our characters are all still our characters. We'll go and play another game for a while. And then after a while of that, we'll get sick of it and go back to the first game again and play those guys. Usually we go back and forth between Call of Cthulhu and RuneQuest. But every once in a while I throw in a ringer. We'll play a game which we usually use the Call of Cthulhu rules, RuneQuest rules, but it's something completely off the wall. Like we had a game where everyone played themselves And I said, a flying saucer lands in your backyard, and they all rushed out, and they climbed aboard it. There's no one on board. The flying saucer carried them up into space, and then they were in space aboard the flying saucer. See, the aliens had walked off it to go check out something Earth, and they left it open so that humans now had this. When the humans walked aboard the saucer figured they were the aliens coming back, and took off with them to Saturn. And so I said, okay, now you're a bunch of guys using, in a flying saucer orbiting Saturn. What do you want to do? And they said, well, we're exploring. They took off, and we had a little campaign doing that. I promised I was going to talk about role-playing and computers, but I lied because I decided to go on another track instead. You'll find that my talks tend to wander around like that. Whatever is the next idea that sounds interesting to me, my brain will kind of hop onto that and go on it until I can't think of anything else to say, then it will jump on the next idea. For instance, this is the thing I'm talking about right now. In my personal game mastering style is to try to know almost everything that's happening in the world of the players. So I know all these different things, and then I pop the players down in the middle of it and say, okay, what do you want to do? And I never lead them down a path or tell them where they ought to go or give them any kind of instructions at all. And some players are very flustered by this until they get used to my style, because I guess it's more common for game masters to kind of say, the bartender at the inn says there's an old dark house at the top of the hill. Okay, so when I moved to Baltimore to work for Microprose, and I was very used to just letting the players do whatever they wanted. I said, okay, what do you want to do? And the players kept saying, well, what does the bartender say? And I would say things like, well, he wants you to buy more beer, I guess. I didn't know what they were expecting of me. It was a little culture clash of they wanted to be told a little of what to do, and I didn't realize they wanted that, and so I had to learn a little bit. And so I started giving them little clues, but still, after a little while, they learned that they could do whatever they want. I didn't have some path they had to do. I just was curious to see how they interact with the world. So that's my style. I am known to cheat as a game master when I'm playing. I don't cheat very much, not nearly as much as I'm accused of, and I try never to let the players know that I'm cheating. But yes.
Your cheating is to work. Does it benefit the players, or does it benefit you as a game master?
I don't see a difference between benefiting the players and benefiting me as a game master. See, the way that I have fun in the game is by observing the players. Okay, and right. Okay, I know what you're saying. I don't cheat on behalf of the monsters unless I think it'll make the game more fun. Usually, what I'll do is, like, if we're starting the game off, okay, and the cave troll has rolled a critical hit to the party leader's head in the very first round of combat, I'll kind of go, this fight's going to be over really fast. I think that's going to be a regular hit, okay? Or if they're playing a game and the characters are searching for a secret door that I really kind of want them to find, and none of them can make the damn roll, I'll say something like, well, as you search along, you see a crack in the wall, and they can, do things. I will cheat on their behalf as often as against them, but let me put it this way. Their characters would think I'm cheating against them sometimes, okay? But I'm always cheating for the players, but not necessarily for their characters. Do you get what I mean? So, because it's a group fantasy that you're sharing there, and the players have to have fun. An adversarial relationship here is completely ridiculous. Even though I wrote Call of Cthulhu, I'm saying that, okay? I wrote the game in which the game has the most power, almost more than any other game, except maybe Paranoia. But the game master has a hell of a lot of power anyway. He can really oppress the players bad if he wants. And yet I say that the game master and the players are having fun together, and that the consideration has to go both ways. I don't play role-playing games very often. I really like playing role-playing games a lot. Whenever I get together with a bunch of people, they make me game master. I don't think it's because I'm the world's greatest game master. I'm pretty good. I've met plenty of game masters better than me. It's just that because I'm a big game designer guy, they think that I must be a super great the game master too, and I'm okay. So I had to do that. So I don't play very often. When I do play, people are always stunned by the fact that my characters aren't really powerful. They're just like these ordinary guys that run around and get in trouble and get killed off in the mills. Yes?
What sort of characters do you play, and what sort of outlaws?
Well, what kind of character I like to play? I don't really have any fixed kind of character I like to play. In my most recent Call of Cthulhu campaign, where I got to actually play in, I played a woman called Dagmar Rasmussen, who was a secretary to one of the other characters and just made his life complete hell. She would run everything for him. She would set up appointments for him. She would pack a lunch for him, and he like never got to agree to anything. He was the big important guy, you understand. But another player would say, "Can you meet with me tomorrow?" And I would say, "He has an appointment already tomorrow." And she'd say, "Quiet, Dagmar." I said, "No." So I just tried to make my characters annoying to him. I often play characters that are some other character's servant or something like that, so I can be put in a position to really give them trouble. There is one of the things that we have at Chaosium that I still have to say is what we call a player rating. Okay, as we see it, for a game master to a typical good player that you like having in your campaign counts as one person. But there's some people that are harder to game master for because for whatever reason. They get drunk every time you game with them, or they shout, or they always want to go fight the orcs or something. These guys might have a player rating of like 2 or even 3. Okay, and so if you are now in California, I knew 2 guys that were 6s and a 5. Okay, now so my theory is that if you had these 3 guys in a game playing with them, it would be the same as trying to game master for 17 ordinary people. Okay. So game masters, you're welcome to use this as a player rating. I'll assure you, most game designers I know are a player rating of 2 or 3. We're troublesome in 2 ways. First way is that since we know the rules of the game usually that we're playing, it's really hard for us to keep quiet when the game master wants to bend one of the rules. We'll say, "Well, you can't do that." And we'll say, "I wanted that." We'll say, "Oh, okay, we'll let you do that," but we'll always bring it up when the rules being met. And the second reason is that most game designers spend so much time game mastering and game designing that we tend in the game to kind of end up on the game master's side when we're playing, and so we'll lead the party down routes that we're certain are going to be bad for the party. And the other party, I played the Call of Cthulhu campaign at a convention, and as I started to play, they said, "Oh, you should be part of the leader because you're Sandy Petersen." I said, "Okay," and about half of them were killed, they realized the error of their ways, and they say, "Why are you trying to kill us?" I'll say, "I can't help it. I'm too used to it. I wasn't trying to kill him. I just kind of, whenever there was a choice of 2 things to do, I'd always try to do the first thing, So I would try to get them to, when we found a hideous monster in the basement of the house in this campaign, I said, "I think we should try to keep it alive and put it in the back of a pickup truck and drive it to California and sell it to the Institute." And they said, "You're crazy. This is a terrible monster that has tentacles and eats people." And we said, "Well, what could go wrong?" Yes, but after all, they were not listening. But anyway, it's just the habit you get into, I guess. Maybe that's another reason people don't play anymore. Okay, I also play computer games, even though I design them and also play role-playing games. Don't play computer games as much as, well, actually I play more role-playing games because, like I said earlier, you can get role-playing game people together maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, but you can play computers, whenever the kids are asleep. Yes? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Variation that you don't always know what kind of experience, or are you looking up to for this way and it takes really long time?
The question is, do I use rules that I wrote myself, or do I make additions to them and fix them up? To explain it. The answer is, well, the rules that I wrote myself and published are in fact the rules that I would have wrote for my own campaign anyway. So they're kind of my house rules. I will sometimes make little additions or changes just for fun, but not very often. I pretty much stick to the rules, and it's not because the rules are God and they must be obeyed. It's because they're my rules. Just mine happen to be in print. Okay? So anyone that game masters that happens to use my rules, you have my complete permission to change anything you want to make them your rules. Okay? This is the game the way I play it. It doesn't mean it's going to be right for anyone else's campaign. So I'm lucky enough to get my house rules into print. That's all. So the RuneQuest game is pretty much the way I play it. So I guess that answers your question. When I play someone else's game, I pretty much make lots of changes. If I play D&D, I change all kinds of things. If I play Tunnels and Trolls, Tunnels and Trolls I don't play very often. But when I do, I keep it just like it is because it's so crude and primitive that I kind of has a little charm of its own. Yes. Yes, in playing the game master, do I like solo campaigns or group campaigns? Do you mean campaigns with one person or campaigns with 50 people? Or with a group of people? One-on-one? No, I don't play one-on-one. I like having a bunch of guys together. And I think it's because I think of it not so much as a game, but a social opportunity. If there's more guys around, there's more excuses to stray from the game subject and, tell jokes and do other things. And so I like getting together with a lot of guys. I admit it, I don't get together with a bunch of people and play only the game and think only of the game and just don't talk about that. That's not the game. We mess around. A person that is really fixated on just playing the game would hate one of my campaigns because we do play the game. We do game playing all through the evening, but we don't do game playing solid all through the evening. Is all I know that there are people and players, and there's nothing wrong with them physically or mentally, that like to just stick to the game and only do that and nothing else, and that's fine. And it's not for me. I like taking a break every once in a while, especially after something impressive has happened in the game, when there's been a huge battle or someone's got married or died or whatever. Then we'll usually pull back and relax and talk about it, or tell old war stories. Also, I typically have campaigns that last a really long time. I try to make them last as long as I can. I had a campaign in California that lasted for 6 years with the same characters. Well, of course, they'd be killed sometimes. But, the same players going for all 6 years. And by the end of that campaign, we spent much more time reminiscing about old events than actually playing our new characters. So I go, remember when this happened to your guy? Yeah. And we just talk about the old things. It was pretty sad. But that was in California, and now we have a new campaign we've been working on for a while, and we'll see if it gets 6 years old again someday. But the long-term campaigns are really great in the respect that you can have people and individuals and guys from eons in the past come back and do stuff. Lost my train of thought. Time to start a new one. Any questions? Yes? No? That's not a question. Okay. We'll go on to the next subject, which is that of... Yes, you have a question?
Well, I'd like to ask you, do you have any difficulty of playing, not killing players afterwards?
Do I have any difficulty with pulling players? You mean is it hard for me physically or mentally or emotionally?
No, I mean, player characters. Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty trivial to kill a player. Depending on the game you're running. I mean, it's not hard to do it. Do you mean, do I feel bad about it when I kill him?
Yeah.
No. Not particularly. I don't go out of my way to kill them. What do I do when it's time to kill it? When a character gets killed in one of my games, I give the guy at least, if I can, 3 chances not to die. The way I do it is this: the player says, "I want to go alone into the cave troll den. I'm sure they're all dead now," and I will say, "Are you sure you want to go all alone to the cave troll den?" And they will say, "Yeah, I'm sure, I want to go in." I'll say, "Okay." He'll start walking in, and near the entrance he'll say, "You hear a rustling noise near the back of the cave troll den." And he'll say, "Can't be a cave troll." And he goes in further, and then the third time is, "Okay, the cave troll attacks you," and then they have a fight, and in the fight, he might not escape. But I try to give a guy 3 chances not to die. I would never, for instance, have a guy go into a room, pull a lever, and have a ton of bricks smash it. Okay? Okay, I would say, there's a warning sign on the door. I'm going in. It says, there's a big red lever with a skull and crossbones taped to it, and a pile of crushed guys underneath. Okay? And they'll say, I'm going to pull that lever. And then I'll say, the bricks are falling. Can you make a really low jump roll? I just try. Maybe something that obvious, I wouldn't give him 3 chances. Because he's going to pull a lever with a pile of guys underneath, and then you just die. But I try to give the guy... my goal is that I want the player to feel that he's dead because he was an idiot. Or he's dead because not because he's an idiot, because he chose to die. Okay, for instance, I'll have a player say, I'm going to stay behind and be the rear guard and die heroically fighting the monsters so you guys can get away. And that's fine. The player made the decision. Okay? I don't want a player to feel that he's dead because I arbitrarily killed him. Even in Call of Cthulhu. And Call of Cthulhu is great for that, because in Call of Cthulhu, you have lots and lots of excuses to tell the player something's coming for him. You know, it's getting cold outside in the middle of summer. The sun darkens. There's a bad smell, and you can go on and on about it there, and the player doesn't even necessarily realize that I'm giving him hints not to necessarily die. The player says, is like being creeped out, and that's very effective. So that's my approach to killing players. And it doesn't mean I don't kill players all the time. I kill players really frequently, despite these hints. What can I say? Maybe my players aren't very smart. But there are times when I remember one time I sat down, and they're going to go into this really terrible place. It was this network. It was a museum of supernatural beings. It was a RuneQuest game that had been left underground for hundreds of years. It wasn't a dungeon exactly, but it was a lot like one. And they were going to go into this horrible, terrible place. And I said at the start of the thing, I'm certain at least one of you is going to die today. I wonder who it'll be. And then we started playing the game, went through it, handled us fighting the hideous monsters and tentacle things. And they got out, and not one of them was killed, and they were very proud. Because they thought, when I said that one of them was going to die. And I thought one of them was going to die, maybe more than one, but they got out. Now, with saying the thing about my hesitation to kill players, at convention games that I run, kid gloves are off. People seem to expect me to be really brutal and violent and bloody at a convention game, and I am. Because one thing is because I'm packing up as many deaths as I can into just the 3 or 4 hours I run at the convention. Whereas at home, of course, it'll take we'll play for months and months. And of course, a guy might die every couple weeks, but I got to pack in a whole lot of stuff into one little short game at a convention. So usually at a convention, I try to arrange it so only one person lives, or no one. I don't like pick guys that he's going to live. What happens is that I have really terrible things happening that are dangerous and bad, and then with any luck, one of them might get out. Sometimes 2 or 3 get out, and then they're really close, and I tell them that sometimes everyone dies, and I tell them, usually someone's out of this alive, and then they're embarrassed, but I don't care. Okay, it's not like there's a winner or a loser in a role-playing game anyway. It's just kind of everyone's there to have fun, and you can talk about the guy that you had that was working dead. I have players that voluntarily retire their characters and never play them again. And these are characters they like and want to play again, but they don't do it because they think it would be wrong for that character to leave the people he's been with. There's 2 styles of role-playing campaigns. I've described the 4 styles. Now I'm going to try the 2 styles. The 2 styles are there are campaigns that really seem. I'm talking about fantasy games now, like RuneQuest, Dungeons and Dragons, not so much modern games like Cthulhu. In these games, there's some game masters that really like to have all the action take place in one small area, one little kingdom or one little section of the kingdom or one little city or one neighborhood of the city, and they know everyone that's in there, and they got all the armor shops picked out and all the actions there, and you deal with your clan leader and with the witch woman who lives down the road, and there's all this kind of very detailed stuff, and those are really neat campaigns. I don't have the patience for those. My campaigns tend to be traveling campaigns where the players will go across the world and back again and up to the North Pole and down to the South Pole, and they just are going all over the place and meeting different things all the time, but they're very exploratory-oriented campaigns. So I attempt to set things up so the players, well, for one thing, this benefits me because it lets the players feel they're very much in control of their destiny. And it also, I just like traveling and seeing cool things, so, here I am in Finland, for instance. And so I figure the players like that too. As an example, in my recent Call of Cthulhu campaign, the players all started on these small islands, pretty much based on Scandinavia, and the island they came from, the people said, look, we don't have much contact with the outside world. We're trying to have our island mature and get more contact. So here's all the bear skins we trapped all the past year. You take these in your boat, go out, trade it, get lots of money, bring it back to the island, and give us all the money, and then we'll invest it in something new and give you more bear skins. And the player said, sounds good. So they got a whole shipload of bear skins. They went out, had adventures and fought pirates and traded the bearskins. Then went back to the island, and the whole island had been destroyed. A rain of fire had come down and just burned everything up on the island. The players were like, oh my heaven, what am I going to do? But see, from their point of view, it was like this terrible tragedy. All their friends and families and relatives were dead, except for every once in a while one of them got dead. They usually meet one of the survivors from the island to be a new character, you know. But from my point of view, what they had now was they had this ship all full of money from the bearskins they traded, and a mystery to explore and stuff to do. And so from a game master point of view, it was kind of a good situation. And they went off. They still haven't figured. They found out where the fire came from after a year of play that burned up the island. They still don't know who did it or why, and they can't get to it because it's like 700 miles inland, and there's a war zone between them and it. It's huge wars happening between before they can get to it. So they're brooding darkly on how they get through the war zone, and they can't settle the river. So they're having a lot of fun in the meantime. But I tend to like to give my players a lot of independence that way. Instead of going to the players and saying, well, you have no money, but you have this stick and some furs that you wear on your back, and you can go and try to kill monsters and get more money. I tend to give them a bunch of stuff at the start, and then kind of leave them hanging as far as what they want to do next. Yes?
I also noticed that there are two kinds of PM campaign types. Some GMs like leaders, what leaders. Some like dungeon explorer story, and some like cities. And some people who like to work as leaders don't like very much the games because they don't really invest anything very much there, and it's kind of hard run.
Her comment is that some game masters like to play in the wilderness, some like to play in the in dungeons and some in cities, which is very true. Generally, my guys, I guess, are mostly out in the wilderness. We go into cities once in a while, but cities are like these alien, strange places to my players. They don't like to spend much time there. There's always mysteries and things going on that they can't figure out. Why is that person trying to kill that person? I don't know. This is city politics. And they leave. Dungeons I do every once in a while, not very often. The problem with dungeon, of course, is that it's so completely bogus and hard to believe there would be a dungeon. You know, they have to make lots of excuses for the dungeon. And but they can kind of fun if you're a wargaming or power gaming type game master, they're perfect because there's tons of opportunities for that. But there's not much storytelling or role playing inside a dungeon. It's pretty much just power gaming, wargaming. Another difference, another way of distinguishing game masters. It's what the fourth way so far. The fourth way is how much control the game master gives to his players. The great example of this is you have a game master that is sitting there, and the player says, well, we're going to leave now, but before we go, we'll stop and get something to eat at the Indian restaurant across the street. Okay, and the first kind of game master says, okay. And the game master, you understand, he's never mentioned it. Okay, the second game master says, the first kind of game master says, I didn't say there was an Indian restaurant across the street. You can't assume that unless I say so. And the player goes, okay. The second kind of game master says, well, actually, it's a Chinese restaurant. Okay? And the third kind says, okay. And let the player kind of make it out of the world. I am usually the second category of, well, actually, it's a Chinese restaurant. Not always, but the reason I do that is because every once in a while, when my players are inventing stuff in the world for me to use, they invent something. I actually had something already planned for that place, and I can't let them know. In other words, if I always let the players make up anything they wanted about the world, for instance, say that across the street I had the sinister Chinese restaurant of doom, okay, which was full of evil monsters or something, who knows what, and the player said, well, I'm going to go to the Indian restaurant across the street. If I always said, yes, okay, but this one time I said, no, it's a Chinese restaurant, then they know that there was a bad thing. It's the same principle as whenever they're looking, as when they're traveling across country, I make sure to mention, well, you see deer, and you see rabbits, and you see cattle, and you see, and you see whatever, because if they never see anything, except monsters, and then one day I say, there's a herd of cattle to one side, they go, whoa-oh, they pull their swords. They know something's going on, because I never mention cattle normally, so you have to kind of watch that kind of thing. That's a game mastering trick that I've learned by by heart experience. I've been game mastering role-playing games since 1973. So I learned a long time ago to start mentioning little things. I mean, if you're traveling, the players say, we're going to take a 1-week-long trip along the main highway to the big city. And you say, okay, well, 2 days out you meet some orcs, 3 days out you meet some bandits, and 4 days out you meet, okay? But if then you say you meet a peasant with a wagon, and they only ever, you get the picture. If they never meet peasants with wagons on the street, and you mention one, they know that this is not a real peasant with a wagon, it's some terrible thing, and they got to kill this guy and rob him and destroy his wagon. But if you're always mentioning peasants with wagons, then it's not a problem. So, does anybody have any questions or problems with their games, the game master? They want to get advice from me or criticize my style, or we can go on to other subjects such as how to design games, how to design computer games. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Okay, how to get passive players to start acting. This is a real problem. I rate passive players, for instance, at a player rating of 2 because they take extra time from me to get them into the game. I have a couple techniques I use to get them into the game. One way I do it is to make them the party leader. Then they have to do something. Okay? Now, of course, party leader in my games, I don't pick a party leader, really. What happens is that the party leader kind of evolves by who the other guys think the party leader is. So if the NPCs always treat this one guy as the leader, then he'll kind of become the leader and he has to act. Another technique I've used to bring a passive player out is to get them involved in some really crucial plot. I will say, well, for instance, if it's Call of Cthulhu and there's some kind of quiet guy in the background or something, I make sure that it's his sister that was found hideously murdered in the old dark house. And so he's the one that has to go talking to people. And like when they go to the lawyer, if the other guys start talking to the lawyer instead, the lawyer will say, well, I want to talk to the guys, to his woman's brother or sister, or whoever it was, the sibling. And so the player is forced to come out of their shell a little bit and do things. Role-playing games in general, I think if anyone plays them long enough, they'll stop being passive. Because role-playing games very much force you to start interacting. One thing is that the other players need to talk to you, and you can't really solve your problems usually unless everyone's cooperating and working together. So I have found that after a year or so playing role-playing games, people tend to pretty much not be all that passive, and they'll speak up. Sometimes they'll be quiet, but it's not the same as being passive. I have one player that sits very quietly listening to what everyone else says, and then he tells them what he's going to do, and by gum, he does it. And they say, don't do that. It's like, well, I think that my God says I should do this. And then he just goes off and does whatever he wants. So he's quiet but not passive. If a player, this leads up to the bigger question of what happens if you have a player in your campaign that is destructive, or in some way it doesn't fit in. A player that never participates, or a player that always just wants to go kill the monsters if your campaign isn't that kind of campaign, or a player that actively subverts. I had one player who pretty much never got along with the party. He would, when the party had made a plan to trick the evil wizard into giving them something, he would tell the wizard that they were trying to trick him, so the wizard knew, and this kind of thing. Generally, he'd subvert the party. When I have problem players like that, if I can't get them to change their ways very, very soon, then I figure life's too short, and out of the campaign. Now, I'm way too nice a guy just to kick him out of the campaign, so I'll usually let the players do it. Usually, long before I'm sick of a player, the other players have had it up to here with this guy, and they will take direct action for me. I've also had players, I guess the worst player I ever had actively cheated. He would roll his dice and lie about what the numbers were. I don't know why he cheated in a role-playing game, but it kind of seems to void the whole purpose. I mean, like I said, you don't win or lose a role-playing game, but he would do this, and like I said, the game master can cheat. That's one thing, but the players shouldn't cheat. Now, the players can make suggestions for the game master to cheat. Like they can say, well, I didn't actually make my jump roll to get across the gap, but I'm really strong and I took off my armor first. And I would say, well, make a dex roll too or something, That's a different thing. Well, I guess the time is almost upon us for this to degenerate into my starting to tell old war stories from Game Master events. So I will explain one that was a way that the Game Master I knew cured a player of always trying to power game and get edge to the other players. What happened is this is back in the battle days when all we had was D&D. It was the only game anyone could play because this is 1976, I think, something like that. Anyway, this player kept asking to play a Golden Dragon instead of a regular PC type. And back in those days, a lot of guys had rules for playing other things besides humans. Anyway, I want to be a Golden Dragon, he kept saying. So the Game Master finally broke down and said, okay, you can be a Golden Dragon. And the player said, I guess I probably have to start as a little baby one and work my way up. The Game Master said, no, you can be a young adult like the other races. All start as young adults, right? So you can be one too. He said, wow, because of course the young adult Golden Dragon is pretty much a kick-ass monster. So he said, well, do I have the power to... did I have all the powers of a Golden Dragon? Sure, you got them all. So the player said, I can teleport and everything? Sure. So the player said, I'm using my legend lore to find out what the most powerful magic artifact in the entire world is. The Game Master said, it's the Ring of Infinite Wishes. Okay? In the Palace of Orcus. The player said, I'm going to teleport there. And the Game Master said, okay, you're right in front of the ring. Hundreds of demons are coming to get you right now. He says, I teleport away. He says, okay, you're out. You got the ring. The player took the ring and said, okay, I make myself the most powerful god in the universe. Okay. The player said, I want to own all the gold and all the land in all the universe. The Game Master said, okay. The player said, I want to have all the magic power that anyone could possibly have. More magic. And the Game Master said, okay. And the player sat there for a while and looked at the scare sheet, and then he put it aside and pulled out some dice and says, I think I'm going to roll up a half elf. You know? Because ultimately there was no point to it anymore, so that was kind of a good occurrence. I have another story. This story kind of hinges upon if you know what the English word gazebo means. Does anybody here know what that means? Not one gazebo. Okay. Well, let's see if you can figure it out by the end of the talk. Not all English speakers know what a gazebo is, okay? It was not an unknown word. What happened is that a bunch of us were adventuring in this at this convention, and we had come through this dimensional gate. This is, again, the olden days, just D&D's around, 1977. We came through a gate, and the Game Master was describing what we saw. He says, well, you see this area, it's a garden, and there's little rivers, and it all tended, and there's a gazebo in the distance. And a gazebo is, of course, one of those little wooden structures with the, right, that you have in gardens. Okay, so the player will go, okay, and one of the players is playing the paladin. He has a magic sword that can detect good. He says, a gazebo, eh? I'm going to try to detect good in the gazebo. The Game Master says, it's not good. It's a gazebo. The player says, well, I will shoot one of my arrows at it. I hit the player, and the Game Master didn't get it. And the Game Master said, okay, you hit it. The player said, what do I see? The Game Master said, you see a gazebo with an arrow sticking out of it. And about this point, the other players realized what was going on. And the player said, well, isn't it damaged? The Game Master said, no! You can't, the player said, it was a +3 arrow. And the Game Master cracked. And he says, look, the arrow didn't hurt it. If you wanted to destroy the gazebo, you could chop it down with an axe, or you could burn it or something, but it's just a gazebo. And the player is thinking, he doesn't have an axe, doesn't have any magic fire. I run away. And the Game Master completely lost it and said, it's too late. It's spied you. It leaps after you, pounces on you, and eats your guy. And the player was game. He said, I'm going to roll some fire magician to avenge my paladin. And then at this point, all the rest of us just cracked up and couldn't handle it anymore. It was too much. There was a game designer in the U.S. Actually, he no longer designed games, but he designed a number of very interesting games, and one of them was the game Bunnies and Burrows, which is just what it sounds like, where everyone plays rabbits. And he always designed these very interesting games. He also did a game called Swordbearer, also did a game called Heroes of Olympus, and probably none of you have heard of any of these games. Dennis Sestera was the guy's name, and his games were always really innovative with cool ideas. How many of you have played RuneQuest? Or Call of Cthulhu? Okay, the game system in RuneQuest derives ultimately from the game system in Bunnies and Burrows. Okay, this guy was a great designer, but no one ever played his games because it's obscure subjects. Anyway, he was also a very strange player. I was playing in a game of Thieves World with him. Thieves World being this, basically the way we played it was that it was at a convention again. You'd come to the convention, and you'd play the Thieves World game. You could play a guy from any system you wanted. So we had Tunnels and Trolls guys, and Traveler characters, along with RuneQuest characters. Everything was just in the same game because we didn't care, because it was Thieves World, so it was okay. So everyone's all together, and what Dennis likes to do is propose these special plans, okay? I mean special in the sense of handicapped plans, okay, and trying to the party go along. So what happened is that we're all sitting together, and I knew Dennis, so I was watching to see what and we're all, we had to rescue the princess or some stupid thing, you know, the usual thing you always have to do in these games. I think in this case it actually was rescuing the princess. And so we're all talking, how can we get to the princess, how can we do this, how can we do that? We had this big talk about how we're going to rescue the princess. And you know how when a bunch of players are all talking about a plan, they all talk, and they stop in a little lull for a moment, and then they start talking again? Well, we had one of those little lulls, and just in that lull, Dennis, who's been absolutely silent up to now, suddenly speaks up. He says, I have a plan. And of course, because he was the only one talking then, everyone was quiet, and we all turned and listened to him. It was the perfect psychological moment. And it's very rare that you have everyone in a game quietly listening to one of the other players, but that's what was happening. And he said, I think that we should go and get a wagon load of fruit and vegetables down to the market, and then take it up to the wharf and dump it. And then he sat there like that, and everyone kind of was waiting for the next stage in his plan, and it became apparent that this was his plan. That was all there was to it. So then we sat there a little longer, and jaw started to drop. And then someone said, that's a bad plan. And that became the catchphrase for the entire convention from then on. Everyone, whenever anyone said something, they'd say, that's a bad plan. And that was kind of the way it went. We talked in a previous discussion, and later on we're going to talk again about LARPs. But the reason I'm bringing them up right now is because live-action role-playing games, it is because in the games that we run in the States, we give awards at the end of the game to people. And we don't give awards for best role player or anything. We give awards like worst master plan. And I mention this because if there had been an award for worst master plan, I think that Dennis Astaire would have got it. If any of you ever see any of his games, which is unlikely actually, but if you do, a game by Dennis Astaire, it's worth looking at for the incredible ideas that don't quite gel together. He also had run a campaign a friend of mine was playing in, and he gave players abilities and didn't explain them. For instance, he gave my friend's character was a nerger, okay, N-E-R-G-E-R, and he would say, and the player said, well, "What does a nerger do?" And Dennis Astaire said, "Well, he nurges stuff." What's that? And so they started, anyway, he wouldn't tell them. He said, it's obvious. And they started playing the game, and my player would say, they go to a door, so my friend would say, I'm trying to nurge that door. And Dennis would say, are you crazy? You can't nurge that. And my friend never found out what nurging was in the whole campaign. I mean, Dennis finished the campaign and moved away into Texas, and never discovered. And then years later, he met Dennis and asked him. Dennis had forgotten what it was, and it was really sad. Anyway, those are examples of game mastering and playing techniques that I don't recommend, but that were kind of fun for the players. That's certainly not things I do. So, let's see. We have enough time for questions. I guess we don't. All right. Well, yes. Oh, the gods in my games? Well, in Call of Cthulhu, or they're like buried under the sea, or things like that. Or RuneQuest? In RuneQuest, they never see. I try to keep RuneQuest, my RuneQuest campaign, with the gods as much vague and abstract and out there as possible. I mean, you know, I try to keep the players not sure if there really is the gods. I mean, they know they get magic power from something and it comes out of the temple, but you know, I mean, that player I mentioned that says, God tells me to do this, I mean, that's him saying that. And if he can talk to the players into believing him, that's fine by me. You know, I didn't tell him that his God said that. I don't. When players try to contact the gods, they don't very often answer, or they answer in some really ambiguous way. For instance, in RuneQuest, there's a divination ability that you ask the gods yes and no questions. Well, to answer, I say, well, you know, you get a bunch of sticks and you shake them up and throw them down, and you cast a piece out the answer from the sticks. You think it says it's kind of a negative answer, you know. I don't want it to be any clearer than tarot cards or something, because I think that's better for the campaign in general. I don't mind having players having a firm faith in their gods. I don't mind having the player characters having a firm faith in the gods in the game. I want the players to not be so sure there's really a god in the campaign. I once was playing with a person, and he went to the local priest. He wanted to get a resurrection. It was D&D again. He wanted to get a resurrection or something, and he said, I'm donating all my money to the priest for this spell. I said, how much is that? He said, oh, it's about 15 gold pieces. I said, are you crazy? You're not going to give me a resurrection for 15 gold pieces. He said, but it's all I have. Isn't giving all you have more important than a total amount of money? And I said, no. You know, the gods are mercenary, and if they aren't, the priest of the temple is mercenary, and he wants, you know, X thousand gold pieces or whatever the price was I was charging at the time. And the player was very shocked. I also treat the temples in RuneQuest as, I try to make them not very much like Earth religions. For example, a player in my RuneQuest campaign wanted to do something for the god Humak. I can't remember what it was. He's like offered him something, and the Humak people were kind of rude to him. They said they shouldn't be rude. They should be really nice. They can get more members in their cult. And I said, they don't care how many members they get in their cult. They want to worship the god Humak. You have to qualify. You have to please them to get into the cult. It's not a matter of them doing stuff for you. He said, well, they wouldn't have a huge religion then. I said, they don't want a huge religion. They want to have only the best in their religion. And that player just couldn't get it. Couldn't understand that this wasn't a missionary religion that wanted to have everyone in the world join it. It just wants to be what it is, you know. And I don't know if that problem ever comes up in anyone else's campaign, but I get it not frequently now that I have my campaign. Now that I got my players kind of picked out in my campaign, I don't have problems like that. But in the past, I've had people that weren't able to make the culture shock, weren't able to understand how things can be very different in a different society. As one simple example of a difference in society, not long ago we had a bunch of us together. I like old movies a lot, and we'd rented the movie Triumph of the Will, which is this Nazi propaganda film, which is really well filmed, and of course it's you know, it's an evil Nazi propaganda film, but it's quite a striking movie. So we're all watching this, and we had, and this is the culture shock, we're watching Hitler go along in his motorcade with his hand up like this, and all the people are shouting and cheering. The film camera zooms in on weeping girls, and you know, the whole shebang, and we're looking at it, and suddenly we realize the vast gulf between the totalitarian way of looking at the leaders and the democratic way, because we suddenly realized that all those people in the movie were trying to please Hitler and make him happy. Whereas if you look at a political rally, I assume Finns are the same as Americans. In an American political rally, you have Ronald Reagan or whoever up there in the front, and he's trying to please all those people in the rally and make them like him. He wants them to like him. Okay? Whereas in the totalitarian state, it was like it was just an inverse of the politics, the way that I'm used to thinking of them, and that was a useful insight to me that I've then since used in games to blow my players' minds. When they find out, why isn't the king nice? And he says, well, you know, you have to please, you know, it's the opposite of how you think. So, for ideas in games, I watch old movies, TV shows, read lots of books. Any movie, no matter how bad, has some idea within it, I believe, that is worth stealing for a scene in a role-playing game. Am I supposed to talk for 2 hours or 1 hour? Does anybody know? 2. Okay. Anybody really know? Does anybody have a sheet that has a schedule? And we'll read it off to me and find out if it's really 2 hours. If it's 2 hours, I'll be proud to talk here until I go dry, but... Yes?
Just one.
Just one. Ha! Okay. Well, it's because I was just about to go into a bunch of ideas on how to use movies and such for running horror games and other games. And I thought maybe I better save that for my speech tomorrow. But I won't save it all for my speech tomorrow. I'll use part of it right now. I'll use the story about the fantastic movie, I Married a Monster from Outer Space. Has anybody seen this movie? Okay, it's bad, huh? Okay, this is a really bad movie. It's just like its title, I Married a Monster. Yes? Okay. Well, I'll just talk for a little while, and then I will stop. Okay. In this movie, there are these hideous aliens that come from outer space and take on human form so they can marry the women, and because everyone likes Earth women, I guess. And the whole plot is lame-brained, and the acting sucks, and the special effects are bad. But there's this one scene, see, where the alien, after his wedding night, which is not portrayed in great detail because it's from the 50s, but he goes out on the balcony, and he looks like a person, and he's smoking a cigarette, and as he's out there, there's a flash of lightning, and for just a second, in the flash, you can see like this knob, gross alien shape underneath. Then it goes back to the person again, and it's actually a pretty good effect. You kind of go, geez, what just happened there in the bedroom? That's kind of scary. And so I stole this and adapted it for the players. So what happened is that we were playing Call of Cthulhu, and there was some terrible thing happening up at the old castle. Okay, like there always is. And the players went into town. They weren't sure what was happening in the castle, but they knew something was bad. And they roused the townspeople and said, we've got to go. And the townspeople got those pitchforks and torches and those rake things. And we're going to get them. And they all, in a huge mob, were tramping up the road to go and get the thing to the castle. Well, as they're going up the road, there's this lightning flash. Okay? And the players are sitting there. Suddenly they notice that every one of the townspeople in the flash was a hideous monster. And it's back to normal again. Okay? And the players are walking along and they say, okay, they're all monsters. Have they always been monsters during the all time we've known them? Do they know they're monsters? Did the other players see this? Because I told them each individually. How can I get together to talk? How can we get, what's going on? And the players, kind of slowed down the walk up the hill and kept trying to, did you see what I see? And figure out, are they going to eat us? Are they our friends? They couldn't. It really blew the players' minds, and the rest of the evening was shot. All they did the rest of the evening was try to figure out what's going on with these townspeople, and it was, I don't even remember now how it turned out. Okay, because the fun was all in the. Well, I do remember, but I'm not going to tell you. I don't remember because it wasn't important. What really was in the fun of this big shock, and it was one of the best role-playing things I'd ever designed. And it came from that terrible movie. So every movie has something worth stealing. I guess that's the burden of my evidence. So I will now sit here and answer questions for as long as anyone wants me to, despite how polite and reserved you finish are. And then I will be done. Any other questions? You have a question?
Yes. Could you please tell us something about the new Quake game?
Yes, the new Quake game. All right. This game is supposed to come out late in the fall. There are some screenshots available on the internet. They don't do it justice. The game looks as much better than Doom as Doom did over Wolfenstein. Okay, it's really nice. It's genuine 3D with very detailed textures, and we use texture rounding maps so that a square block can look like a round pipe. The creatures in the game are all 3D objects made of hundreds of polygons. Okay? And then texture mapped to be rounded and good looking. So instead of being sprites, as in Doom, where you look at the front of the monster and he's looking like this, you go to the side and he goes, jump, jump, like this. You know how they do in Doom? And this, they smoothly rotate. And also you can rotate them other directions, like you can hit them, knock them off a cliff, and they'll stand on the way down and starfish, and splat hit the ground, have to get up again. You can hit specific areas of the monsters. The lighting in the game is real lighting. It's actually ray traced stuff with shadows being cast behind objects. So if there's like an object here, and there's a light here, the object will cast a real shadow. And, yes?
What kind of monster machine do you need to run that?
When the levels are made in the same complexity as Doom, it runs as fast as Doom. It's much more advanced. However, we're making the levels pretty complicated just because we like the thing. We figure if you have a Pentium, it'll run great. If you have a 486, it'll run. I wouldn't do it in a 386. It'll run. No. I run it on a 486. Okay. It runs on my 486 at 10 to 20 frames a second. Okay. So I don't think that's bad. Yes. Oh, technically there's a plot, it's more of a plot than Doom, not as much as Wolfenstein. Pretty much just another mindless bastion game. Your weapon is this big hammer, and you have several. You can several. The reason it's called Quake because your best power is the Quake ability. Where you take your hammer and you bash it on the ground, and it sets up this crack that goes along the ground, with little puffs of dirt coming apart until it hits the guy you're aiming for, and then does tons of damage. And then there's also the mega Quake power where you hit the ground and it makes the entire world shake, and everyone in the whole world falls down. So in Quake, when you're fighting the guy, you're running over to him and you slam with the hammer, and he spins around and falls down. I mean, there's rotational force that they're laying down there. You slam and he tries to get up, and you hit him again before he can get up, if you can. Then he gets up and runs, and he leaves a trail of blood behind him, and you follow the blood to where he went. So it's much, it's pretty violent in the Doom tradition. It's more fantasy oriented in that you have some magic that you're using as well. So there's healing pools you can go into and they'll heal you. Or you can catch a guy on fire and he'll be burning with and you have to go find somewhere to put the fire out. Well, yeah, we could use it to make that kind of game, but we want to make violent, mindless games. Well, look, it's like this. How many people here have played a computer role-playing game? Okay, you all know it's not really a role-playing game, right? I mean, there's no role-playing in it. It's a puzzle solving. You're trying to solve the puzzle the game at the designer set. You don't role-play. If you role-play, it's something trivial like, I must be nice to all the innkeepers, then I can get my niceness quotient up a point. You know what I mean? It's not really role-playing, okay? So given that they aren't really role-playing games, neither is Quake. Quake does have a little bit of a goal. It's even less of a role-playing game in that it's not so much, you solve different kind of puzzles. It's Doom-like puzzles. But
I guess the most you can do is adventure. But that's still a
yes, but there's nothing wrong with shoot-em-ups. I mean, they aren't morally inferior to adventure games or anything. I mean, it's just another kind of game. I like shoot-em-ups. I like adventure games too. id Software has found that we are really good at making fast action games. And we have a habit of selling our technology to anyone that wants to use it to make an insightful, thoughtful, politically correct role-playing game. And in fact, for instance, there's a game being done on Doom right now called Strike, which is a role-playing game. You go and you talk to guys. There's guys you're supposed to kill, guys you're not supposed to kill. The whole shebang. id isn't doing it, letting this other guy do it, because we're doing the things that we know we're good at. And it's as if we found our niche in the market, and we're going to do that. We'll do the violent bad Quake, and anyone else that wants to adjust it for good things. Also, Quake is going to have a multiplayer effect, just like Doom, except even more so. Quake works on a client-server basis, where there's one computer that runs the network, that everyone else plays it. Now, if you're playing only with one or two people, the same computer can be a client and a server. But if you have a big system, you can get a computer that runs 60 guys at once, and you can go from level to level and be chased through the levels by someone else. We are expecting that there will be little companies all over the world that will do nothing but provide service to Quake and similar games by phone line. Already there's guys talking to us about it, guys like Microsoft. So it's not just some kind of imaginary thing we're talking about. It's like there's a lot of guys that have got licenses, they're going to be sending these things up. So I don't know how much they're going to charge for it. I hope it's pretty cheap, but you never know. And of course you can always play it at home without having to go through these big server guys. But if you want to play a game with a deathmatch with 60 people, Quake's going to be the game for it. Especially when you can trace them to where they hid by their blood drops. Yes?
How do you think about you have some people wrote books about it, actually 2 books.
Yes, and I was required to read the 2 books before they came out. Yes, I think they're among the worst books I ever read. If anyone's seen the Doom books, they're dire. Have you read them?
Not yet, but I have read Magic the Gathering.
Well,
Never tried.
I strive hard not to read any books based on games. That's just the way I am. Even books written by friends of mine based on games. I don't know, the Doom books are bad even for game books, I feel.
Yes, I'm by nature both curious and masochistic, because I always like it.
If you want to read some hack fantasy, I recommend A. Merritt. Now, his books are really good. The Moon Pool, the Dwellers in the Mirage, and The Face of the Abyss. Those are great books, and they're available in English and robot Finnish. The Doom books are just right. Now, that said, there's a Doom movie. This is not a rumor. They're working on a Doom movie. Doesn't mean that it might not be canceled at some point, because Hollywood can cancel a movie at any point. But they're supposed to start filming this fall and release it sometime next year. Don't know who the male lead is. They tried Tom Berenger, and he couldn't. He wanted to do it because he likes Doom, but he could not. They were talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger. Last year they said that they thought they had a 7 in 10 chance of getting Arnold Schwarzenegger. I guess now they're not going to get him. I don't know who's going to be the male lead, but they wanted to get someone important. They wanted Keanu Reeves. Okay? So maybe they're scraping the bottom of the barrel now, but I don't know. All I know for sure now is the producer of the movie is Ivan Reitman. He did Dave, he did Ghostbusters. He knows what he's doing, obviously. So I have hopes for the game. I figure if it's better than Super Mario Brothers, I can't ask for anything more. The movie, I mean, not the game. Okay. Any more questions? Yes. Well, this January, I think it was, they were talking about we're doing the big RuneQuest 4 release. No, it was last January. And it was not written very well, and Greg Stafford said they would not want to publish it until it had been greatly rewritten. This kind of destroyed the spirits of the guys that had been writing it, and I guess they aren't doing any more on it. I don't know where RuneQuest 4 status is now. It's kind of Steve Perrin's sort of in charge of it now. It's kind of going along at a low ebb. In addition, Chaosium is trying to put together a team to do a Glorantha game, which is not RuneQuest, but probably has the same system. Pendragon or Call of Cthulhu system or something, and that's moving along too. Avalon Hill recently had financial troubles, and they're looking off to sell part of their company, and they have fired or let go almost all their game design staff. So I don't know where Avalon Hill sits now. So it looks like a cold winter for the role-playing community, which is one of the reasons, sad to say, that I am now in computer games, because we're still doing okay there. Computer games is kind of a risky business in a way, because in the first place you're in consumer electronics, in the second place you're in entertainment, showbiz, and both these things are very volatile kind of industries. So you put the two together, you get a really volatile industry where at any moment some companies are bubbling up to the top, some companies are sinking like rocks, and you just have to hope you're on a bubble going up. Right now it's going up. So, questions about Doom or Call of Cthulhu or anything? Yes. Well,
Do you use just paddles here?
the question is, how do I use the huge giant monsters in the Cthulhu mythos that can squish the players like grapes? Well, in the first place, you got to remember that even the little bitty monsters in the Cthulhu mythos can pretty much squish the players like grapes. Okay? I reserve the huge giant. I guess I use the like Cthulhu or Yogg-Sothoth as the last scene in a whole campaign, whereas I'll use something icky like a Shoggoth or a Dark Young of Shognigaret, something like that, as the last thing in a adventure within a campaign. You know what I mean? So like we kind of build up those things, and I don't know as my players. No, once my players went into actual combat against Cthulhu, which was the most ludicrous thing I ever saw. Usually I just use them for visual effect. I mean, I make sure, the players have read the book. They know how bad these things are. They don't need to fight them. I say, Yogg-Sothoth is here. He's oozing over the world. What are you going to do? Well, I guess we'll go insane or run away. Or they don't try to fight them. So I use them for visual effect. Or more better, I will use them as a threat for visual effect. I will say, the bad guys are almost finished with the ceremony to summon Yogg-Sothoth. The players will go, oh shit, Yogg-Sothoth, he's so bad. I read it in the book. And they'll do things, and then Yogg-Sothoth won't come or he will come or whatever. One thing I don't do is there are game masters who will fudge a player's victory. They will if the players have to win because if they fail, the roll's destroyed. Then if they are about to not win, the game master will help them win. I don't know that. The players have to feel that they won or lost on their own nickel. Now sometimes this causes a problem. Like for instance, what if they lose, the world is going to be destroyed? Well, my solution to that is to make it ambiguous what the result was supposed to be. For example, there's a campaign in Call of Cthulhu called The Shadows of Yogg-Sothoth. I think it's out now in the Cthulhu Classics book. And at the end of this, Cthulhu comes back, and he's really mad. And if the players fail to drive Cthulhu back, the way I work it is, I run this actually a couple times, and it takes place before World War II, of course. And what happens is if they succeed in sending Cthulhu back, then I say, well, you're lucky. Instead of the whole world being destroyed, we had the Second World War. And if they fail to send Cthulhu back, I'll say, you really screwed up. Look, we had the Second World War. It could have been stopped. So the players know if they won or lost, but I kind of changed the ultimate effects to make sure the players feel that they had a big influence. And I think the players sometimes know what I'm doing, but it's all for the fun. So, any other questions or comments? Well, he was first, I think. Finns all speak very quietly too. What was that?
When you are game mastering, do you like high fantasy or low fantasy style?
High fantasy or low fantasy?
Do you like...
What's low fantasy?
Do you like use big monsters?
Oh, high magic or low magic. We call that high magic or low magic in America. High fantasy is like Tolkien or Elric or like that. It's like big fantasy. Whereas low fantasy in America or just fantasy would be something like Bewitched. Okay, Bewitched is a fantasy show. Is Bewitched ever made it over here? The movie, the TV show? No? Groundhog Day. That's a fantasy movie, but it's not high fantasy. Okay, but your question is high magic. Well, high magic game is one there's tons of magic, huge monsters all the time. Low magic is when there's only a little bit of magic. I guess I run my campaign more low magic, with occasional wins. That might be a side effect of the fact that I run RuneQuest, which is a very low magic sort of system. I mean, in RuneQuest, no one is shooting fireball. I mean, the most powerful magic spell in RuneQuest kills one guy. So in D&D, that they would scoff at you if that was all you had as your magic power. So I guess I run low magic. But Call of Cthulhu is also low magic, because the players don't get much magic. In a typical evening in Call of Cthulhu, the players may not see any monsters, but when they do, they know it. Then you had a question after him. I remember now.
Do you freehand a lot when you
Do I?
Do you freehand a lot when you get to player characters, or do you invent things while teams carry on? And do you have trouble
Okay, I understand. The question is, do I figure everything out beforehand and then make the players follow it, or do I kind of make things up as I go along? And what do I do if players do something wrong? Okay, what I do is I make up a lot of stuff beforehand. Okay, but the stuff I make up is all stuff that's like out there in the world. I don't usually figure out what the players are going to be doing. When the players do start playing, I make up a lot of stuff on the spot as they're going along as well. You know, and what happens when the players start to go somewhere I hadn't planned on? What will happen is that I'll take something that I had going on somewhere else and move it. Okay, so for instance, if I had a plan for them to meet a giant and his skeleton band that plays xylophone on their own ribs, okay, and it was going to be in the city, and they don't want to go to that city, and they're going to go over here in the wilderness into the desert, I'll have them meet the guy walking along a road in the desert, because I want them to meet the skeleton band, and they're just going to meet him wherever they go. But the players don't necessarily realize this, though now all you do, they'll oh, that's kind of cool, and then they'll go back and go to the city. Of course, in the city, there's no skeleton band anymore, because they met him in the desert, he's somewhere else. So, but I do a lot of making up things on the spot, especially because I'll often listen to what the players are talking about or thinking, and that will inspire me to some idea. Okay, like for instance, when I did the big rain of fire from heaven upon the island, I didn't have a clue as to who did that. It just didn't have any idea. So, but the players were all talking about it and testing it and trying different things, and the stuff they tried and did and attempted gradually showed me who had done it. Okay, that they said maybe it came from clear around the world here in Finland, and they sailed right there to find out the other side of the world. And I said, well, it can't be here, I knew, because they came here right off the bat. So obviously it must be somewhere closer to home, because I don't want them to find it yet. And so they went and said, nope, it's not there. And they go, oh, darn, you know, it's sort of the principle of it's always in the, you know, when you can't find your shoe, it's always the last place you look. It's kind of what I was doing to them. Or they'll make logical things. They'll say, it must be fire worshippers. You know, and I'll think about it and say, yeah, I guess it must be. Or maybe moon worshippers. I'll think, okay, I'll make them, you know, and then so what I'm saying is that what the players don't choose what happens, but the players heavily influence it, just even things that are part of the natural world, because I like to give them a lot of stuff to say. So, does that answer your question? Okay. Yes?
This campaign you mentioned you had in California for 6 years, was it a Ropecon campaign?
Yes.
Tamatella?
We went to Palatella during part of it, yes.
Tell about it.
Tell about it? It was 6 years. Come up and talk to me afterwards, I'll tell you about it. One of the guys in the campaign wrote a campaign log that was this thick, that was taken to Ropecon and auctioned off for a completely obscene amount of money, which stumped me that people would pay money for an old campaign log, but I guess there's fans and fans, so. Okay, finished off. Any questions about computers or computer games? Figure paint updates. I didn't understand it. There's a bunch of noise behind this thing, or somewhere there's someone talking loud. What's that?
Figure. Help.
Oh, what about it?
When will it be updated?
When American McGee updates it. Mailed him at american@idsoftware.com. Say, update the finger. We're now putting up our own web page. It's going to have like menus and stuff to go around and do things. Well, I say we're doing it. Kind of other guys doing it, and we're helping them a little. See, id Software is a little tiny company that only works on one game at a time, and so each individual game must be a success, or our company is in bad shape. And so far, we've been able to keep it up. I think it's because instead of trying to do a game that will appeal to the most people possible, we try to do games that we would really like to play, and then we're certain someone will like them. Whereas if you made a candy that everyone liked, or that didn't offend anybody, it would be a really bland, terrible piece of candy, you know. Whereas if you make more specialized candies like this salt licorice that you guys eat, you know, it's a lot more interesting than just a bland piece of candy. But not everyone will like it. Well, it does games that not everyone likes, but some people really like. So that's our trick, survival. Okay, so that was questions about computers. I guess. Any questions about role-playing games? Okay. I guess that then we're done. Oh, wait.
When you design your adventures, do you like make individual puzzles?
I'm sorry?
Do you make individual things to solve for each character?
In my role-playing games?
Yeah. Do you adventure?
Do I make individual bits to solve? I guess I don't comprehend. Maybe it's jet lag getting me. I mean, do I design individual characters?
No, yeah. If you have a thief in your group, in your party, will you, as a master, will you make him a lockpick?
I try to paint the big picture and make up the little things on the spot. Because, okay, like I will say, this is the city that worships the hell goddess. And then when players go there, I don't know who the mayor of the city is or anything. I just make things up. I'll say when you walk in, well, it's got a solid black wall. Yeah, that's it. It's all black. And it's all topped with a row of spikes with skulls on them. The skulls have actual human eyes in them that watch you as you come in. And I'll just make all that up on the spot. But as I'm thinking what would look good for a city of the hell goddess. And as I'm making things up, I'll kind of gauge the reaction of the players to it. And if they're kind of going, oh, that's kind of cool, walk in, then I'll stop with the skulls with the eyes and bug out. But if they're really wowed by this, then I'll start emphasizing more other things in it too. There's clutching hands that come out of the walls and whatever. So I kind of try to see what the players are going for, okay, and work on that. So beforehand I just make up the big thing, and then afterward during the game I'll make up the little details, and then I'll fix the little details. Sometimes I'll write them down if I think I'm going to fix them. So game after game I'll know what the little details are. Because it would be bad for someone to go back to a place and find out that the fat jolly Smith that I made up in the first place isn't there anymore because I'd forgotten about him. So. All done? Thank you.
Ropecon.